Today I'm discussing natural resources and how various types of resources can connect to countries' levels of economic development and their risk of war. And this is motivated by the question of today: how do natural resources affect a country's political and economic stability? And this week's topic is something that you would think would be something that countries would directly benefit from, like winning the lottery, that there is uh, geographic distributions of different resources underneath the soil in different countries. And some countries have won that geographical or geological lottery in having resources beneath the surface that is of value to international markets and in a lot of ways essential to the day-to-day workings of a globalized international system, as well as our day-to-day lives that enable us to get from here to there and have lights and electricity and everything that we use from it. And however, over the last 30 or 40 years, there's been a growing recognition in research as well as in policymaking circles that this winning the geographical lottery might actually lead to potential economic downsides, in the way that winning an actual lottery has been found to have negative effects on the people who actually win the lottery. Not all of them, but a substantial percentage of them, that there has been research on this. Almost any conflict that the students in my class are focusing on this semester, you can connect to one extent or another, either resource abundance or resource scarcity, shaping states' capacity as well as incentives for groups to use conflict. And this connects to countries like Afghanistan, in which there's an estimated at least $1 to $2 trillion of resources underneath the ground, not necessarily oil, but other minerals. And there is a recognition even then, before the previous government collapsed with the Taliban taking over control, that President Ashraf Ghani stated that we are at risk of the curse of plenty, the curse of resources. And other countries have also recognized the potential downsides of having resource abundance, and some one famous quote called it the devil's excrement, that oil, natural gas, diamonds, gold, other kinds of resources can end up being paradoxically costly to those areas in which it's produced. And for me, this is something similar. You can see these kind of patterns from individual level with lottery winnings, national level with resources. In the animal kingdom, with the advent of the COVID vaccine, it was heralded, the various vaccines, they were heralded as of great benefit for the world. It's enabled them, like New Zealand just did the other day, to reopen to the rest of the world and allow people to have less severe illness in the case that they got it. However, there is a cost to the production of these vaccines that you might not be aware of, and that is because horseshoe crab blood is key to producing not just COVID vaccines, but a lot of other vaccines. And so where these things are actually produced can be a drawback to the areas and the individuals that ostensibly should stand to benefit through the trade or the production of these resources, which leads me to today's puzzle. Having resources is usually considered an asset. Why then has having natural resources often led to negative outcomes? Dutch disease, which I can go to in detail in workshops if you're interested, the resource curse, and up to and including civil conflict. And this is ongoing and towards the end of the second part of this class, in which we've spent the first part of the class defining the different types of human security and political violent outcomes that we've looked at in this class. The second section has been focused on various distributional differences within countries, whether having large populations or small, people moving across borders or within them, water and food, agricultural production being considered not natural resources, they're renewable resources. Today we're focusing on natural resources, and in next week we're talking about another kind of exogenous shock of natural disasters, before in week 3 turning to potential domestic and international responses to these challenges. And so this is the goal for today. I've written my master's thesis on the topic of natural resources and conflict. It is connected to a whole bunch of topics that I focus on in my research, as well as a lot of topics that students in this class have focused on. So it's something that I'm really excited about, that you see the policy making relevance of our purchasing decisions at an individual level, as well as connections to a globalized marketplace that makes things like our cell phones and cars and other things that we depend on in day-to-day life possible. And I'm really interested in connecting natural resources to positive and negative outcomes, as well as start to hint at the kind of international cooperation efforts to prevent these negative effects of winning that natural resource lottery. And before turning to that, I wanted to get your take. I've really enjoyed reading about individuals in the classes' responses to where you get your water and your connection to water resources or food production, agriculture. So today I want to connect it to resources and how whether you've thought about or not, the globalized resource chain that enables our lives to be possible. I mean, probably sitting here in my command center by myself, I probably have the resources and production of maybe 50 countries in all the things that I have here. And I think in a lot of ways, your lives and most other lives in the developed world are similar to that we depend on the production of resources. And only within the last couple years, with the supply disruptions due to the global pandemic, have people been forced to think about the precariousness of the production of some of these resources, as well as the reemergence of a focus on national interest and potential focus on developing our own capacity, as well as the raising costs of a lot of the resources that we increasingly depend on. So, have you thought about the globalized resource chain that makes your lives possible? And if so, do you have any concerns about the negative effects on these things that we depend on the producing countries, and what resources are you think have the potential for the most negative effects according to one of these classes themes? And if not, why not? With that, I wanted to touch on the readings for this week, because I think they connect for those of you who are writing research proposals, as well as all of the students in my class that are writing final essays. These readings, I'll put links in the description, I think do a great job at presenting material in a way that the reader, at least most of them in previous years, have enjoyed, and that can bring your point across in a simple and direct manner. The Macartan Humphreys article, Natural Resources, Conflict and Conflict Resolution, has a distinct and clear abstract, which I think students in undergraduate writing essays could use to think of something similar for the introduction of their paper. The case study example in this paper I really thought was interesting in talking about the Chadian case with oil production, and in the end there's that surprise hook that none of the oil had actually been pumped. A lot of the president, the coup that ended up leading to his death, all the political instability in that country was just in a lot of ways driven by a resource that was just underneath the ground but hadn't been extracted yet. There was also a huge number of mechanisms that in connecting resources to conflict that he discusses and tries to come up with creative empirical ways to measure these different mechanisms. We're going to be talking about some of them in just a second in these videos, and as well as in the workshop, but there's clear competing mechanisms that he highlights with these subheadings per paragraph. Also something that could be potentially useful for students in this class or even in other classes. The Michael Ross reading from the Annual Review of Political Science is also, I really think, one of the best examples that I've seen of a literature review. In just one example of this would be the clear debates or thematic elements that we've talked about in this class, in the explanations for the outcomes that he touches on. And clear, he includes 3 research questions in his literature review. Of course, his is well over 10,000 words. Most undergraduate essays are much shorter, but it's just a way to try to, as we read for this class or for other classes, I would suggest that you take a step back and think about not necessarily just what they're saying, but how they're presenting information, both with evidence and case studies or data, as well as the argumentation section and the framing of the essay to make it as interesting and compelling as possible. So just an example in trying to get us to switch from being consumers of information to start thinking about how we can produce solid research. With that, I will end this first section in introducing the topic of today, of natural resources and conflict, and then I'm going to turn now to concretely defining the terms that we're going to be talking about for the rest of this week. So let's turn to that now.